Are you ready for story time? I'm going to take you back to my early days as a trainer, right to the beginning of my fitness journey. This was back in the days of the old fitness instructor. In the olden days, we're talking about 20 plus years ago now, you generally used to have to start off at the beginning. You'd start in a gym almost like an apprentice in a way. You'd obviously get paid, but you would be a fitness instructor. That's a general dog's body who looks after the members, does weigh-ins, check-ins, picks up garbage, cleans the machines. That's the way most of us back in the day used to start. Then if you're lucky and you're a good boy, you get on to be a personal trainer. Now this is back in Liverpool, and I've been doing this job for about 6 to 8 weeks maybe. And one of the members came up to me. I didn't really know the guy very well, but I'd seen him around the gym, and he said, can you just, I want to do a check-in, can you just take my weight please? I said, oh sure, yeah. So I took him into the consultation room. And this is back in the days of pen and paper, and everything was done manually. There was no tech involved, no databases. It would be using what we used to call a Tanita machine. I think you still get them, body impedance. So you would stand on, it would give you a weight, you'd hold on to 2 levers, and it would give you a rough approximation of your body fat and your weight. And then what you do is I would open the filing cabinet, I'd flick through, and I'd pull out his consultation form. And on his consultation form, it would have the date he joined, and his goals, all that kind of stuff. And then next to it would be, you would staple on every time he did one of these little Tanita weigh-ins, a little printout, so you put the new one on top. So he did this, I told him what the results were, and he said, oh, fair enough, and then off he went. Now this guy, he would train maybe 4 days a week. He would do a lot of classes, he would do a spin class, and I knew that this guy worked hard. He would come back, he would be drenched, he would really give it beans on this spin bike. He wasn't slacking at all, and sweat a lot profusely, and then he would leave. Didn't really do much in terms of free weights, but when he was there, he worked hard. So he left, and I had to look at his thing and say, well, okay, where's this guy at in his journey? And I looked and said, all right, so goal to lose weight, get in shape. Again, he'd been there for about 2 years at this point, based on the date. And I looked at it, and it was like, right, this is his initial fat percentage and his weight. And I looked at the new one, and I thought, well, that's odd. He's actually gained weight. He's actually fatter and more unhealthy now than he was when he started. And yes, I am using overall fat percentage as a measure of health, because there is no such thing as fat and healthy. Everyone, 99.9% of the population would be better if they had optimal fat percentages. So it left me a little bit confused, and I thought, well, that's a strange thing. He's coming in, he's working hard, what's going on? So I had a little look at the filing cabinet, it was in there, and so I thought, I'll take out some other names. And I did this at random, maybe 10, 15 different names, and I looked, and it was the same kind of story for the majority of people. It was either no change, or they were in a worse position than when they first started. You obviously get some success stories, but by and large, your average Joe and Jane, nothing was happening. So I had this kind of vivid, right at that point, realization that, all right, they're coming in and doing something, but something is obviously missing. Something is wrong. And I put it down to what I learned from my course and my knowledge and my kind of understanding so far, that health and fitness could be considered a game, and just like any other game, there are rules to the game, and there are pieces in play. And you can play the game with pieces missing, but just like a jigsaw, you won't be able to complete the puzzle. Some pieces have more value than others, and you might be able to get very far with playing none of the major pieces, but ultimately you will always end up at the same point where this is incomplete. And if you break the rules and cheat, then obviously that is you're not playing the game properly, and you'll come unstuck at some stage, because if you're trying to take shortcuts, well, as they say, there are no shortcuts to anywhere worth going. So this was the realization, and I put it down to basically what I consider there would be 3 main pieces of this puzzle, and the rest are supporting players. So what are these 3 main pieces of the puzzle then? These 3 big players. They're your nutrition, your mindset, and your activity levels. Now outside of those, you have the smaller pieces, Now, these are important, but not as important as the big players. These are things like, your workout program, frequency, all that kind of stuff, your nutrition, supplementation, your rest, your ability to rest. By the way, I'm keeping sleep as a completely separate category here. Sleep is probably one of the most important things that covers everything. The more we know about it, the more we know how important it is. But I think at the minute, a lot of people, when it comes to rest, they spend too much time resting, lying on the couch, watching Netflix, as opposed to being active. So I'm talking about rest as in rest and recuperation from exercise. I'm not talking about sleep. We can't get away from the fact that we all need around about 8 hours. That's a given. So let's go over the 3 things in a bit more detail. Let's look at your nutrition. As the saying goes, you can't outrun a bad diet. Doesn't matter how good everything else is. If you consume in excess of what your goal, of what your needs are, you will gain weight. If you gain weight, it has knock-on effects to everything else. If you gain excessive amounts of weight, it will affect your hormones, it will affect your ability to move, it will affect your ability to exercise and burn calories, so it's connected. Your activity levels. You could argue that, or I would argue that it's more important to be active on a regular basis and have a really bad training program than it is to have the world's best training program and be sedentary all day long. You can't kind of outwork out a lazy body. It has a huge impact on your overall fitness and development to be able to move. The theory is, the saying is, what it used to be, eat less, move more. In reality, it should be move more, eat more, because this is the optimal way to achieve health and fitness goals. Give your body what it wants, but make it work for it. And then the last thing, and maybe right at the top there, is your mindset, because the mindset is so important that you really have to truly believe in what you're trying to achieve. If you go into it, half-arsed and like you're not really that bothered, and you think, well, people know deep down when they're really committing to something. They might be like, wow, this is it, I'm going to do it, I'm really going to do it, I 100% believe it. Whereas some people might be like, oh, I'm going to do this. And you might be able to turn things around. I've had it in the past where clients have been, you can see they're not really committed, but over the course of the months and as it develops, they grow into the role and they grow into the mindset. The reason it's so important is that you have to have the patience and the mindset to be able to absorb pitfalls and trips, because you're bound to have these as you go. You might go for 3-4 weeks and almost nothing happen, and then you have to have the confidence and the patience to be able to say, right, something obviously isn't working. I need to look at this and address it. And that takes a lot of mental toughness to be able to go up against something and say, right, this isn't working. And instead of just saying, forget it, I've tried, it doesn't work, you have to find another way around the obstacle, over, under, through, whatever it takes. So this is where the mindset can be so important. So when I was referring to these people, I was going through the filing cabinet, they all had pieces of the puzzle missing, which ultimately led to catastrophic failure in the end goal and the desired outcome. One of these things was missing, 2 of these things was missing, all 3 of these things were missing. Maybe the diet was okay, but they sat down all day, they hardly worked, and when they came to the gym they didn't do much. Maybe they were really super active, but their nutrition was so poor that didn't account for recovery. And maybe they didn't have the right mindset because this is too hard, I'm not going to put in as much effort. It all has to be right. Now, only when all of those 3 things are right do the other pieces, things like your workout program, the gym you train in, your kind of rest patterns, your supplementation, all that kind of stuff, only then, when those 3 main pieces are dialed in, do the other things come into play. And that's when you can start to make the real big changes. If you have aesthetic goals, if you want to build more muscle, you want to be more toned, you want to work on athletic goals, or you want to be, more of an endurance athlete, those 3 things come in, and the minutiae and the small little tweaks that you can make, that's when it pays off. But if you don't get the first 3 things right, the major pieces of the puzzle, it's going to be, you might get very far with just the small pieces. You might have an amazing workout, you might have optimal rest, you might be training in a great gym full of people that motivate you, you might have a great coach, but ultimately you will hit a wall, and unless you address those three big pieces, the big players, then you're always going to come up against it. So my advice is concentrate on the big things, the macro view of it.